In the world of Vampire the Masquerade, the Camarilla is a mysterious, shadowy organization of vampiric royalty that controls the world from the shadows. In Vampire the Masquerade Vendetta, you're going to be taking on the role of vampiric elders trying to vie for the influence of the prince in order to be rewarded favor. And you're going to be doing that through a area control and almost deck building mechanic where you're going to be slowly growing out an option of cards that you can play every turn in order to affect the areas in front of you and try to gain allies, which will ultimately generate for you blood. And the goal of the game is to have the most victory points at the end of the game. Now, you're going to set up the game like you see here in front of me, and you're going to use a variable number of locations based on the players. And here we have a 4-player game set up. Each player is going to take the deck of their color, and they're going to place their reminder token out so you know which side of each location is theirs. Now, the first locations you use, you're going to use numbered locations, and the last location is the prince's location, and that's this red one here with these marks. In addition, you're going to pass out the first player marker to someone, and everyone is going to take blood to start the game. Now, at the start of every game, you're going to have just one card in front of you, and that is an innocent. Now, these cards are going to provide you blood every round as you kind of slowly drain them of their life force, and they're going to provide you with victory points at the end of the game, provided they survive through the game. You could potentially drain their blood and gain a huge blood bonus, but lose the victory points, and I'll explain how that works during the game. But everyone is going to start with one of those innocent cards. You're also going to start with 2 cards in your hand. Everyone is going to start with a hunt card and a ready to fight card. Now you're going to notice a few things on these cards. For one, they're going to have a power level or a value that they add to combat. Number 2, they have a little symbol that shows during which point of the phase that these cards are going to trigger and you're going to use their abilities. Timing on these abilities is very important as you can kind of create chain reactions based on the order that you play these cards. Lastly, these cards are going to have special abilities printed at the bottom of each card. But everyone is going to start with the same 2 cards plus 1 that they draw randomly from the deck. So everyone is going to have 3 cards to start the game. Once the board is set up, and you're going to see again the victory points over here and then the 3 locations, you're going to deal a ally from the ally deck to each one of these. So you're going to reveal a card from here into each one of these spaces. And this is going to show you what you are competing over. Whoever wins that fight is going to get to take that ally. Now, playing the game is fairly simple. You're going to take turns, one at a time, placing cards at these locations. And you're going to play the card face up. Now, you can choose to play the card face down, which is going to give you a little bit of a surprise. Your opponents aren't going to have the information on what you place there, but that's going to cost you blood. And blood is a valuable resource in the game, so you don't want to spend too much of it. Now, you're going to place these cards, like I said, face up or face down. And that's basically the game as far as how to play it. Now, the key of this game comes in both managing your blood supply and trying to bluff and call the bluffs of your opponents, because you don't know exactly where they're going to be placing their heavy cards or even what their cards are, because everyone at least has the one mystery card that you don't know about. Because as you place these cards out, each player is going to be able to place cards out here in their area. You're going to have to resolve all of these cards and all of these abilities. Now, you're not going to probably be present in every area, but you can come and you can even spread out more cards in the same areas. Now, in addition to playing cards in these locations, you can also place blood. And this is an important use of that blood. Like I said, you're going to have to manage this very closely. But you can also place blood in a location, and that is going to bolster your total power. So each player is going to be able to put that blood out. You're going to have an idea potentially of how much total power they might have here, but then all the cards are going to be revealed, and that is when you're actually going to start triggering these abilities. Now, you're going to trigger these abilities based on the different card types, and you're going to do their abilities in order. Now, when it's your turn to trigger one of your abilities, if you have 2 that might trigger during the same phase, you're going to get to decide the order that the cards trigger. And this order could be very important because you might be gaining blood, you might be stealing blood. If you play a card that gains you blood, right before somebody triggers a card that steals that blood, you're going to be giving it back and forth. Now, I said before that you're going to get blood from your allies once per round, and that's that little blood marker there at the bottom. If you find yourself in desperate need of blood, or if you're about to run out of blood, you can choose to feed on this card. It's going to give you the amount of blood that's in the top, but you're going to tap it to show that it is now worth 0 victory points. So that can be an emergency way to get blood, but it can also cost you victory points because you don't want to run out of blood. And I'll tell you what happens here in a minute when you run out of blood. But as you take these locations and you have these abilities trigger, and like I said, there's a whole deck full of these cards. So there's a lot of these abilities that are going to mess with your opponents. They're going to be able to steal blood. You're going to be able to lower opponent's power. Or you can choose to just withdraw from the fight. If you look at the area that you see that maybe they have a lot of blood, or you suspect maybe they've played a lot of cards there, or powerful cards, you can choose to withdraw, in which case you don't reveal your warriors or your vampires. You get to take your blood back, and you immediately come over here to the prince's area. So you kind of have that ability to back away, and you can just focus on maybe winning the prince's area. So if you withdraw from the first two, you're going to be pretty heavily stacked maybe to win the third one, but you won't have any blood there unless you actually went to that location during your turn. The blood that you had put out is returned to you. Now that's a gamble you're going to take because you can place at multiple locations, but you could always plan on withdrawing back to the prince, or you could just go to the prince's area directly and bid your blood that way. Now, as all these things are happening, you're going to be winning these allies. When you do, they're going to come over here to your ally pile. And again, these allies are going to give you blood, and they're going to give you influence. They're also going to potentially give you special abilities. And you might end up with a wide variety of these. Now, there are 3 different types of allies you can have during the game. You can have vampire allies that will side with you if you have enough power. You have your innocents, which are the green allies. And then you have the humans, which are the blue allies. Now, there is no penalty ever from feeding on a human or an innocent. You can simply tap them, take the blood, and you're going to have less victory points for that card at the end of the game. However, feeding on a vampire is frowned upon by that Camarilla. If you feed on another vampire character, it's called diablerizing them, and that is bad. Every time you feed on a vampire, you're still going to get the blood that's at the top, but you're also going to take one of these Diablerie tokens and place it in front of you. This is worth negative victory points at the end of the game, but if you collect 3 of these during a game, you are immediately eliminated, you lose the game. So you want to be careful in managing that. And you might say, well, that's easy, I just won't ever feed on a third vampire. All right, well, something bad happens to you when you are completely out of blood. This is considered going into frenzy. When you go into frenzy, you have to feed. You're going to take your stack of allies, all the allies that you haven't fed on yet, you're going to shuffle that pile, and you're going to reveal one and feed on it. It's going to be tapped just like you fed on it normally. You're going to get your blood back, and then that card's going to score less points. You could inadvertently feed on a vampire this way, and if you do that, you're going to get another one of those tokens. Now, if a player forces you to go into frenzy, meaning that they played a card that, for example, stole your last blood, they're going to get a victory point or influence for doing that. Now, you're going to play this out over the course of 3 rounds. At the end of the round, you're going to take back all the cards you played, and then you're going to get to draw 1 more. So now you'll have a hand of 4 cards that you can play out in front of you. So your tableau is going to grow for that second round. You're going to do the same thing. You're going to put out 1 ally card in each one of these spaces, and you're going to compete for these allies. Then again, at the end of that round, you're going to pick back up all the cards you had. Any allies that you won were going to be added to your ally pile. And then you're going to draw yet another card. So for the last round, you're going to have 5 cards in your hand to play. So you're going to have a lot more flexibility. You're going to be able to use a lot more of those powers. So what that means is you're not going to be able to use all of the cards in your deck. So every time you play this game, you're going to see a different set of cards. Your opponents are going to bring in a different set of cards, and you're going to have different combos and synergies that you're going to be able to create with these. And this is going to dictate the strategy that you take out when placing on these different areas. Like I said, this is a bluffing game, so you might just play a bunch of low-level characters in one space, which save your higher level characters to take somewhere else, or you might plan on withdrawing and just move everybody to the prince. So in order to take these allies and manage your blood, you're going to have to be very careful with the way that you play these cards and the amount of blood that you bid on the locations. If you bid too much, you might fall prone to that frenzy. Somebody can trigger that and make you lose your last blood. So you have to be very careful. Now at the end of the round, whoever won the prince's location is going to take that first player marker, and the 3 rounds are played pretty much identically. When you get to the end of the last round, that's when you're going to score your victory points. Every ally that survived, meaning you did not feed on them, is going to score influence that's printed down here on the bottom. any that you did feed on is going to give you the influence that's up here on the top. So for example, an innocent doesn't give you any victory points if you fed on them, whereas some allies like this guy here gives you 2 influence if you did feed on him during the game, but it gives you 4 if you kept him alive. So you're going to tally all that up plus any influence you might have earned from playing cards or from driving people into that frenzy mode. You're going to tally that all up, and whoever has the most influence is going to be declared the winner. So this is not a very long game. As you can tell, it's only 3 rounds, so it's plays in about 45 minutes, even up to like 6 players. Now, this is a logical deduction game. You're going to be kind of bluffing your opponents and really trying to figure out and deduce what cards they might have played, what they're bidding on, and when they're bluffing you. So if you can figure that out, that is the key to earning the most influence and being crowned in Vampire the Masquerade Vendetta. So look for this game on Kickstarter soon and take a look and see what all the final components are going to look like, because everything I have out in front of me is just a prototype. So check all that out, then come back here, please leave some comments, ask some questions, let me know what you're excited for when it comes to this game. And as always, thank you for liking, subscribing, and following us at MVM, and I will see you next time.